Wright.
It's not every day that a former NBA player ends up on a missing persons poster.
911, where's your emergency?
That's Lorenzen. But nobody came.
NBA star Lorenzen Wright was found murdered.
He was shot in the face. This was a planned assassination.
People thought this case was never going to be solved.
Then a man that nobody knows is arrested.
Did you kill Lorenzen Wright?
Memphis is not just unique, but it's authentic. It's one of a kind.
Well, we call ourselves the home of rock and roll. This one city where if you talk bad about Elvis, even the black people gonna get mad at you.
We are way more than blues and barbecue. That's what we're famous for, right? And basketball.
Basketball is king in Memphis. It's the one thing that really bring all Memphians together.
Hoop City. It's embedded in the culture. And Memphis, Lorenzen, they go hand in hand.
Memphians loved Lorenzen Wright. He was our adopted son. Born in Mississippi. He came here as a high school basketball player. This kid was 6'11". He could run like a gazelle. He defended well. He was a crazy rebounder.
That's Herb. It's his dad. His dad, who was a former professional player, wanted Lorenzen to experience tougher competition, and he knew that was in Memphis. He was an All-American in college. Played 2 years at the University of Memphis before he exited to the NBA, where he was a star player.
There's the number 7 pick in the NBA draft out of Memphis, Clippers rookie Lorenzen Wright.
Everybody was so proud of him.
Lorenzen Wright.
He is drafted by the LA Clippers.
Him playing on Clippers was amazing. It was Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood was big, and Lorenzen was a part of it. First 3 years that Lorenzen was on his rookie contract was about $14 million. Lorenzen got traded to the Hawks in 1999.
But ultimately ends up coming back to play for the Memphis Grizzlies during their inaugural season. He gets the first jersey, flashes the trademark smile, and that was something that Memphians could cheer about.
Oh, what a move, Lorenzen Wright.
Lorenzen was like the biggest name in Memphis at that time. So the city, they showed him so much love. I was right along with him. I loved it too at that time, because you got to think about it. We're still somewhat kids. We're not even in our 30s yet, so we're still young, and he's rich, so young and rich.
The thing that drives most of the interest in Lorenzen was the fact that not just a super basketball player, but a tremendously great human being.
He helped the young kids in various basketball camps and philanthropic activities. He was our star.
Lorenzen Wright was huge. But when it came to love, there was just one woman who caught his eye early on while he was in high school. And that was 21-year-old college student, Shara Robinson.
They hit it off, and from what we've learned, became inseparable. She'd come by the school and she'd be wearing a shirt that said the Wright way, W-R-I-G-H-T.
She knew that he was going to be rich. He would be a prime catch.
By the time that Lorenzen and Shara were married, they have a growing family. He's done extremely well financially.
Ren would do anything for his children, and it was just the joy of his life to be with his children.
In 2006, Lorenzen got traded back to the Hawks. I would be his personal assistant. Atlanta does something to athletes, and it did it to Lorenzen. So you have all these celebrities there, you have all these parties going on. You have so many women just throwing themselves at you, you know? After a while, it took a toll, for sure.
There ended up being infidelity. According to everyone that was close to them, that they were having some difficulties.
The relationship deteriorated badly and deteriorated quickly, especially when his income level dropped significantly. When his contracts were no longer, in the double-digit millions, they had arguments, disagreements about money. Usually it was always about money.
He was making less money, but the bills were still piling up. And then when he was traded to the Sacramento Kings in 2008, his career was coming to an end.
Shara files for divorce in 2009 and moves out to Collierville, Tennessee.
After being traded again and playing another year for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Lorenzen Wright officially retires from the NBA after 13 seasons. Not long after that, his divorce from Shara became final.
When Lorenzen retired from basketball, he was lost. That was his thing. He didn't know what to do next, So on July 18th, Lorenzen was in Memphis, supposedly to see a recital for his daughter, Lauren.
He's got Lorenzen Jr. with him, and so the night ends, and his friend drops them off at Shara's Collierville home.
I got a phone call that Ren was missing. And my thought was, well, knowing Ren as I do, Ren could be anywhere. Pro athletes, they jump on planes and meet in New York City for a night out, then they go to Las Vegas for another night out.
It wasn't uncommon for him to kind of disappear for a few days. But when his mother, Miss Marion, came out and said that she hadn't heard from him, his kids hadn't heard from him, then that did become concerning.
The whole thing is just crazy.
His mother, Deborah Marion, files a missing persons report with the Collierville Police Department. It's not every day that a 6'11" former NBA player ends up on a missing persons poster. That's big news, and it's Lorenzen. That's when every media outlet in town starts to run stories. What happened to Lorenzen?
Everybody had a lot of questions, and our first questions go to police. Are you looking for somebody? Is there some information out there? What can you tell us? But right then, police didn't know a lot at all. Nobody knew anything.
It seemed like he just simply dropped off the face of the earth.
Lorenzen Wright's mother told us Lorenzen had been reported missing.
Wright was reported missing about 5 p.m. Sunday, July 18th.
Our investigative team has been following the Lorenzen Wright story from beginning to end.
Now that Lorenzen was missing, we went to Shara and Wright's house in Collierville, just trying to get answers. Shara answered the door.
Pray for me and my family. He wasn't able to spend the night because he wasn't here quite that long, but he ran out and he never came back.
She started talking about the last time she saw him, but she didn't indicate that she thought anything was wrong.
Collierville Police Department began in their investigation with the person that would have seen him the last, and that would have been the wife, Shara Wright. She mentioned that she had last seen Lorenzen around 10:30 at night. He had taken a box out of the closet and said that he was going to flip something, and he was going to make about $100,000. She was implying that Lorenzen was involved in some kind of seedy drug deal. Investigators subpoenaed his phone records. The last call that was made was a 911 call to the Germantown Police Department.
Germantown 911, where's your emergency? Hello? 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 No, I got nothing but gunshots. Hello?
It's disturbing. I've heard this recording many, many times. And it still kind of brings up those emotions as though this is something that just happened.
Consider this. You're running, you're fighting for your life, but you manage to actually call 911. And then the dispatcher says, all I got is gunshots.
Germantown 911.
That's Lorenzen. You could tell he was in distress.
What you are hearing, you're hearing a young man being assassinated. You're hearing a young man screaming for his life.
I can't talk right now.
Germantown police dispatchers picked up the 911 call from Lorenzen just after midnight on July 19th, but they didn't turn it over to investigators for 8 more days. And that is a significant delay.
So in this area, you have 3 different jurisdictions: the city of Collierville, the city of Memphis, and the city of Germantown. The cell tower has 3 sides, and depending on the side that has the strongest signal, that's the side that's going to pick up that call and then transfer it where it needs to go.
The 911 call is botched, right? He calls for help. Nobody responds. But police are able to use that 911 call to then track where he was at Callus Cutoff. Now the authorities begin what becomes a massive search for Lorenzen.
Death has a very identifiable smell to it. And they get a whiff of that and they realize there's a dead body out here. After an exhaustive search, the investigators discover the remains of Lorenzen Wright in that field.
For those of us in our newsroom, I think it was just a collective shock. We started doing live shots from that scene. His mother eventually came out when her running across the crime scene tape and trying to reach her son.
I wanted to see the last steps my son took. That's what I wanted to see, the last steps that my son took. That was his last ones, and I wanted to see him.
Because that body had been out there for so long, the heat, the humidity, there wasn't much left. I believe he was between 55 and 60 pounds.
His body had melted literally under the hot July sun, and it just hurt. It hurt all of us who loved him.
I just broke down. I couldn't talk any longer. I just froze. I was in a state of shock. So, worst pain I ever had in my life.
Memphis basketball great and NBA star Lorenzen Wright was found murdered. He had been shot several times.
It became the breaking news all over the country. But this was a NBA superstar found murdered in a field in Memphis.
Behind Martin Luther King Jr., which was a tragic, tragic murder in Memphis. Lorenzen's murder hurt, too. We never would have believed at 34 years old his life could be taken from him in such a horrible manner.
How did this happen? Who dropped the ball? Could he have been saved if they responded initially? So those were the questions that the community wanted to know.
You could not go in a barbershop on a Friday or Saturday and there not be conversation around who killed Lorenzen, why did they kill Lorenzen. So at this point, while there were no identified suspects, everybody was a suspect. Once the police discovered Lorenzen Wright's body in that field, the case transitioned from a missing person investigation into a homicide investigation. At the crime scene, they found a 9mm shell casings and I believe a 380 shell casings. So that tells you that there were at least 2 different shooters. They also found that he was still wearing some very expensive jewelry. So as an investigator, you realize this is not a robbery, this is something else. So the investigators would have started with people that are closest to him, and that would have been the wife, Shara Wright.
Just days before, Shara had told the police that the last time she saw Lorenzen, he had left the house to flip a box of something, which sounded like drugs. But now she claims that threatening men in trench coats had come to the door.
You can't discount that. You have to delve into this being some type of drug hit, cartel hit. When you read through this autopsy report, he was shot in the face, shot in the arm and the hand, which is a defensive posture. And that, to me, as an investigator, tells me that this was a definite planned attack. Investigators discovered that years back, Lorenzen had been interviewed by the federal authorities in a drug investigation that involved one of the biggest drug dealers in Memphis. At least one of the vehicles that they recovered drugs from during that investigation was registered to Lorenzen Wright. They found out that Lorenzen would have people come to him and say, hey, buy a car in your name, and we would front the money. And so he was buying cars for these people registered in his name. But they quickly determined that Lorenzen was not involved in the drug trafficking organization.
Whether you're reporting on a story or investigating a crime, there's an old expression, follow the money. And that seems to be exactly what the investigators did. But what they found was that the money was drying up.
Lorenzen made over $55 million in the course of his basketball career. And at the time of his death, Lorenzen and Shara Wright were bouncing checks all over the place. They had a home that was in foreclosure.
Per the divorce, he was supposed to pay her roughly $26,000 a month.
You have court documents where she had been to court fighting him, saying she wasn't getting any child support.
You have to kind of try to keep up this facade of being the rich and famous when the house of cards are crumbling around you.
Shara stopped talking to the police because they were asking her a lot of questions, but apparently she had a lot to say because she sat down to talk with us.
And when that week marker hit, I went into panic mode. And then it was so heightened by the police coming asking 10,000 questions, and I was like, oh my God, who else? I mean, you have to blame somebody. Everybody wants to blame people.
Did you have anything to do with Lorenzen's murder?
No, no. If I knew who did this to Lorenzen, you would know who did this to Lorenzen.
And I remember asking her about what is she doing now for money? Because there was already stories we had done about how much financial trouble they were in. And that's when she started talking about the jewelry that she had on and what it was worth.
He was an NBA basketball player. He always had a lot of money. I have 12 house notes in my ear right now. I'm just saying.
Your ex-husband, the father of your children, has been assassinated for all intents and purposes. And your reaction is, I have a lot of money. I have all these fancy things. The way she came off in that interview simply did not sit well with me. I also know that there was $1 million insurance policy death benefit. And she ran through that money like Sherman through Georgia.
The investigation ultimately goes cold. Police haven't made an arrest in one of the biggest investigations in Memphis history.
The investigative team did not have the evidence that's needed to move forward with any kind of arrest or prosecution.
It ain't over. I just want y'all to remember, she said it's not over. Just keep on watching.
What the public didn't know at the time is that someone already doing prison time for murder would be the person to give police the biggest tip that ultimately led to blowing the investigation wide open.
For so many years, people thought this case with Lorenzen Wright is never going to be solved. I mean, it was 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, we keep going years and years. Nothing. Silence. Except for Deborah.
He's not gonna be forgotten. He's my firstborn child. And he got 6 kids of his own that deserve to know what happened to their father.
Stand up for Red Right.
After Lorenzen was murdered, the majority of people in the city felt that he was the victim of a plot against him by his wife, because we knew how much she loved money.
For the last 24 hours, social networking sites claim to know the truth. Facebook status updates saying, she did it. We all know she did.
The 5th year anniversary of Lorenzen Wright's unsolved murder was approaching in 2015. The rumors were that maybe she had something to do with, his killing. So I reached out to Shara through Facebook, and I let her know that, hey, I'm a journalist for the Tri-State Defender newspaper. And I said, if it's possible, is there any way that I could meet with you and, maybe do an exclusive? My first impression of Shara Wright when she walked in the coffee shop door was, I'm in trouble, because she was tall and she was beautiful, and I was single. And normally, I do an interview for about 45 minutes. This one turned into 7 hours. And of course, I had to ask her the question, did you have anything to do with the killing of Lorenzen Wright? And through teary eyes, I said, are you telling me that you didn't have nothing to do with it? And she said no. But I thought, if she had done it, they'd have got her by now. We ended up dating, and before you know it, we had got together and moved away from Memphis, Tennessee to Sugar Land, Texas, suburb of Houston, Texas. Our relationship began growing, and then we got even stronger together, and we were happy. At the same time, she had written a book called Mr. Tell Me Anything, and she signed it for me in March of 2015. What she said was, to Calvin, I want to thank you for being the kindest man I've ever known. Never change. Always, Shara Wright. The book, although it had a fictional character named Sharon, she had already told me, this is my life with Lorenzen. There was a domestic violence situation. between Sharon and her Mr. Tell Me Anything, and she had gotten beat up pretty bad.
It was just allegations. We did a report about Lorenzen finding her with somebody else, and there was an altercation, but he said he never touched her. It never became a police report.
Right as we approached about 2 years being together, I would say that things went sour with me and Shara. Some money had came from the NBA, from some video game he had appeared in back in the 1990s, and it was $215,000. And so Shara immediately was like, I want to go after this money. I said, you have an unhealthy appetite for money. And she said, God made me that way. And that was really the straw that broke the camel's back in our relationship. I headed back to Memphis, and she moved out to Riverside, California with her brother.
Early summer 2016, I was the operations commander for the multi-agency gang unit. I had a Shelby County Sheriff deputy come in my office, and basically he said, and this source is telling me that they may have some information on who killed Lorenzen Wright. And this source is a guy by the name of Jimmy Martin.
In 2007, Jimmy Martin, he shot his then girlfriend, Martha Bounds. He's convicted in May of 2012, sentenced to 20 years in prison. He begins cooperating with the Memphis Police Department in the death investigation of Lorenzen Wright.
Jimmy Martin's motivation was to do whatever he could for himself to get as little jail time as possible for the murder of his girlfriend.
Jimmy Martin told us about how he and this other guy, Billy Ray Turner, went to a lake in Walnut, Mississippi, and threw the murder weapon in the lake. We brought the FBI in, and we could hear the divers communicating with the communication team on land, and then I hear, we got it. So they come out of the water, and they've got this clear Tupperware bowl, and they kind of angle the bowl up where we could see the gun. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, I said, and it was just silence, man. And then we were like, wow. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation do their forensic examination of that gun and compare that to the known shell casings that were recovered from the scene. I remember sitting in the office and I get a phone call from TBI, and they said, Darren, are you sitting down? I said, yeah, I am now, but I'm gonna stand up. And she said, this is the murder weapon. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. So one of the things that we decided to do was to kind of keep it quiet.
At this point, police are not releasing to the public the name of the informant, Jimmy Martin, and they're not saying that they found a murder weapon either. Instead, the investigators push Martin further, and what he tells them next will shock some people, but confirm to others what many had suspected all along.
We went back to Jimmy Martin. He started telling us about various meetings that Shara orchestrated with different people to kill Lorenzen. He laid everything out, who was there, who was meeting, what the discussions were with Billy Ray Turner and Shara Wright. This was good. There's some really good stuff.
The investigators again turned to phone records to verify what Jimmy Martin had told them. And an analysis of the cell records shows hundreds of calls between Billy and Shara during the time period before and after the murder.
Billy and Shara attended church together. He had a lawn care service based on phone records. You were able to put Billy Ray's phone, Shara's phone, and Lorenzen's phone in the same general area off of the same towers that were in close proximity of each other when he was killed. I don't think there was any doubt about the information that was provided by Jimmy Martin. Shara was now living in Riverside, California. So we wrote an affidavit and a search warrant to the judge to give us authorization to do a wiretap on Shara's phone and Billy's phone. Now we have to do something that what we call tickle the wire. Do something that's going to start generating phone calls. Simple. Let's get Miss Marion up here. Let's tell her that we found the murder weapon.
After several years, I found a gun. I couldn't do nothing but just boo-hoo and boo-hoo because I was so excited.
Friday afternoon, Marion and her husband made the hour drive to the lake in Walnut, Mississippi, where police say they found the gun they believed was used to kill Wright.
This is the biggest break that the case has seen.
Once the news broke, the phones blew up. Now, we got conversations back and forth with Shara and Billy, but also we start getting text messages. And so all this information is coming in now, the wire's jumping.
There were reportedly numerous conversations that took place around that time.
Because of pending appeals in this case, the courts have not released the contents of these 2017 phone messages or conversations. But according to our sources, the conversations between Shara Wright and Billy Ray Turner were incriminating enough to secure arrest warrants for both of them.
Now, 1 month later, an arrest is made here at the Express Mart in Collierville on Highway 72.
Billy Ray Turner is arrested standing at a counter in a convenience store.
We're scrambling, trying to figure out who this person is.
Much later on, when we were doing research for our podcast, we went back through years of stories and we found video of Billy Ray Turner helping Shara load furniture out of her Collierville home. And there he was in a white sleeveless shirt.
We indicted Billy Ray, brought him in, set him down. He would not admit to anything. So we decided to indict Shara. We contacted the U.S. Marshals, and she was arrested in Riverside, California, leaving a basketball game with her kids.
Shara Wright had been arrested in California.
Evil, evil, evil. Just the wicked witch of the South. But see, now everything is coming to the light now.
A case that had sat seemingly cold for 7 years, we finally had some answers.
She's extradited from California to Shelby County, Tennessee.
Prosecutors alleged that Shara planned with other individuals to murder Lorenzen Wright. It's just a strange story that Shara would sit down at a kitchen or dining table with various individuals coming in and out of the home and talk about different ways that they might kill Lorenzen. The working defense was that the relationship that Shara had with Lorenzen was an abusive relationship. Shara's older two children in particular had witnessed and recalled some of the abuse that Shara had suffered while she and Lorenzen were together.
We have not been able to substantiate the claims that they were planning to bring forward. It's early one morning. Another person on our team gets a tip that she's taken a plea. It's once again all hands on deck.
If Shara had nothing to do with it, like she said initially, why was she taking a plea? And we thought we would get the answers in a trial until everything changed.
It was a little bit chaotic in the courtroom. Lorenzen's mother was present. There were a lot of people in the gallery.
Count 1 of the indictment, Cheryl Wright, when her plea of guilty.
Cheryl Wright pled guilty to facilitation of second-degree murder.
But there were a lot of questions about what was going on, who else was there. Was Cheryl there that night?
I don't think Cheryl Wright pulled the trigger. I don't know what happened. If Cheryl had gone to trial, the state would have tried to bring Billy Turner to the stand. And that was our fear, that Billy would be used to testify against Cheryl. And so that was what led us to really seek the plea deal.
Wright was sentenced to 30 years, but she'll be eligible for parole after 9.
It was a relief, really, to know that she was getting a sentence of somewhere between 15 to 18 years, depending, unless she was paroled earlier. So she'd be able to spend time with her children again.
And I was like, how did I miss this? I mean, I caught the fact that she was greedy, but how was I not able to figure out that she was a killer? I felt more bad for, like, the kids. Who's gonna help them with their homework? Who's gonna go to the basketball games?
Finally, Billy Ray Turner goes to trial for the killing of Lorenzen Wright.
They have a gun that matches bullets. They have phone records, text messages between Shira and Billy before and after Lorenzen was murdered. And they have cell phone data pinging Billy's phone to the murder location. What you didn't have was Billy's prints on the gun or that particular gun coming back to an individual. You didn't have those things.
You solemnly swear or affirm.
There was not a lot of evidence. It was the testimony of Jimmy Martin. That was the main thing, I think, for a lot of people.
The prosecution let the court know Jimmy Martin had been given immunity, meaning for telling the truth, he won't be prosecuted in this crime. And with that, Jimmy Martin got straight to the details.
Lorenzen had his back to him. They started chasing, they started firing at him, chasing. He jumped through the fence. He was jumping like a deer when he fell.
Martin says days later, he and Billy rode together to get rid of the gun used to kill Lorenzen, spotting a lake in Mississippi.
Once we got there, we proceeded to get rid of the pistol.
Jimmy never said that Cheryl pulled the trigger. He never said that she was there. All he fingered was Billy Ray Turner.
On March 21st, 2022, Turner sat quietly as a jury convicted him on all counts.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder.
How could you have murdered my son? That's what I need to know, just how.
We know what Jimmy told the jury, but we still haven't heard from Shira. And we don't know the full story of what happened the night in the woods that Lorenzen is killed. At 52 years old, Turner is living in the place he's likely to die. In 2023, we get a letter from Billy Ray Turner, and he said he wanted to share his story.
My name is Billy Turner. I'm calling from Turning Center Penitentiary.
We're getting to hear from this man for the very first time. Did you shoot or kill Lorenzen Wright?
No, I did not. I never was there. I never was there.
How did you get caught up in all of this in the first place?
I got caught up because I did work with Sheriff.
Was that your gun?
No, that wasn't my gun. There was a lot of witnesses that was not presented, a lot of people that wasn't even mentioned in this case that would have set me free.
We asked police about some of the things that he mentioned, and because they could not concrete say that these people were involved. You can't put that out there.
The greatest tragedy in this case are Lorenzen and Shara's children, because now they have neither their father nor their mother.
They still live today with the conscious thought of mama killed daddy. But it's hard to turn your back on your mother. And there is probably some amount of denial, and that's understandable. That's their mother.
Lorenzen was like a brother to me. No matter what his faults were, his wasn't evil. I don't see why Cheryl or anybody want to, take his life.
Lorenzen could have been the mayor of this city. He could have done wonderful things, man, especially for the youth in this community, man. And all of that was taken away from our young people for $1.
Tragically, this murder was all about money. Now that his NBA career had come to an end, Shara was desperate for money. Simply put, the sin of greed was the culprit.